I want to welcome you all to a celebration of biogas's role in the Danish and US energy and agri-food sectors. And while today's event focuses mainly on the US and Denmark, I'm pleased to say that we are joined by almost 200 people from many different nations. My name is Chris Voll, and I head the biogas and waste efforts for the Danish Trade Council of North America, part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Denmark. I will act as the moderator today. Today's summit was organized by Biogas Go Global, a program of the Trade Council, Danish Energy Agency, and Food and Biocluster Denmark to advance biogas around the world. The three-year initiative is funded by the Danish Industry Foundation. We'd also like to recognize and thank State of Green, where we are being hosted here in Copenhagen, for their assistance and for all the work they do to advance green initiatives here in Denmark and around the world. I believe this summit could not come at a better time. With the release of the IPCC Climate Change 2021 report earlier this month, it is clear we must act even more quickly than previously thought to mitigate human effects on climate. One thing is clear from this report and many others of recent note: the world has woken up to the impact that methane plays in climate change. And on the upside, also they've recognized the positive impact that reducing methane can have in the short term. And to be sure we're all on the same page to begin the summit, as some may be new to the field, biogas is made up of methane, 40 to 70% depending on the source. So when we speak of biogas, we're talking about methane. We hope to use today's event as a celebration of the role biogas has played to date in both Denmark and the US, but not as a closing celebration. I'd like to propose we see it as a groundbreaking ceremony for the future, because as both countries and the world are making progress, we are not close to realizing the full potential of this resource, and we need to move more quickly. We chose to focus much of the discussion today on agri-food and energy, as these are both major contributors to global warming, and at the same time hold some of the largest potential for positive change. Denmark, for instance, has a regulation that all municipalities have a program in place by 2023 to divert food waste to a higher and better purpose. 9 states and a number of cities here in the US have similar laws. And bills have been introduced in Congress to address food loss and waste at a national level in the US. While the capture and use of biogas from landfills has been successfully implemented, it is time to look at more advanced systems such as digesters to capture not only the renewable energy value of food waste, but also the nutrients as organic fertilizer. Both the US and Denmark have strong histories of agriculture, which brings with it the burden of managing vast quantities of animal manure and ag residuals. Thankfully, digester and biogas plants are a perfect solution for managing food waste, animal manures, and other ag feedstocks, as you'll hear from our presenters. And of course, from a renewable energy perspective, biogas and the resulting renewable natural gas are constant and flexible renewable energy supplies. While it is great that resources such as wind are helping offset fossil-based electricity, they cannot decarbonize some energy uses such as heavy transportation and manufacturing. Also, as we look to the energy transition to green hydrogen and other power-to-X applications, biogas can play a critical role in this evolution. Denmark has made much progress on biogas and other climate fronts due in large part to a triple helix approach: a strong relationship and trust between government, academia, and the private sector. There is much to be learned here in other countries. Today, we are honored to have global leaders joining us to share some insights on how we can accelerate this industry to the benefit of all. One of the cornerstones of Biogas Go Global program is knowledge sharing between countries, from policy, research, and business perspectives. We are very lucky to have strong representation from Denmark in the form of the Biogas Alliance, which you can learn more about in the program you were sent. Over the next 2 hours, I hope you will help us celebrate some of the great accomplishments we have achieved to date, but also to set the stage for an even bigger celebration in the not too distant future. Our children and future generations are depending on us to do this. With that, I'd like to introduce a recording from Dan Jorgensen. Mr. Jorgensen is the Danish Minister for Climate, Energy, and Utilities. He became minister in 2019. Since then, the government of Denmark has agreed to reduce emissions by 70% in 2030. We are pleased to have some recorded opening remarks from Minister Jorgensen.
Hello, everyone. I want to begin with a simple question. How do we make sure no waste goes to waste? This might sound like a silly wordplay, but it's actually one of the most essential challenges of our future energy system. And all science tells us that biogas will play a critical role in the answer. It helps decarbonize sectors not suitable for direct electrification, such as heavy transport and heavy industry. Biogas has a major role in the green transition for at least two reasons. First, it helps decarbonize sectors not suitable for direct electrification. Second, it's a key component of the circular economy. When we put waste from livestock, households, and industry through a biogas plant, we get green gas, which can keep heavy industry going and provide green fuels for trucks and airplanes. This is an essential step to decarbonize our modern society. At the same time, we can also reduce the huge environmental footprint from agriculture and produce more sustainable food production. In Denmark, I'm very proud to say that we are leaders within the biogas field. That is especially true in regard to biomethane. We have a high share in the gas grid at just over 20%, which is set to increase significantly in the coming decade. This is a welcome progress. Yet, I do recognize that Denmark is still a small country. So clearly, this is a great time for Danish-American partnerships, knowledge sharing and innovation within sustainable food production and renewable energy. Fortunately, we already have a wide range of partnerships focusing on research and innovation, as well as policy and implementation. We have a lot of work to do, and we know that we can go much further if we work together. The recent report from the United Nations has only underscored the gravity of the climate crisis and the need for us to collaborate today in order to accelerate the transition in both our countries. So let's get back to work. I wish you all a productive and insightful summit.
Thank you, Minister Jorgensen, for those remarks. We're very honored today to have some welcoming remarks from Ambassador Viesborg. Her Excellency Lona Viesborg became the ambassador to the United States in 2019 after a long and distinguished career in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. As part of her role, Ambassador Viesborg helps to lead the green agenda from Denmark in the United States, facilitating the sharing of knowledge and information. Ambassador Viesborg, we welcome some opening remarks from you.
Thank you very much, Chris. Well, thank you for joining us today for this celebration of the Biogas Summit. I would like to start by recognizing our partners in this event, Food and Biocluster Denmark, Danish Energy Agency, and State of Green. And to thank all the speakers, both from the US and from Denmark, for joining us to share their experiences. I recently heard a clever man say, there is no such thing as waste, only displaced resources. This is how I think about biogas, an unprecedented opportunity to convert waste into renewable energy and reduce our carbon footprint in the process. Biogas plays an important role in our country's broader goal of reducing CO2 emissions by 70% in 2030. RNG from biogas is an incredibly important component in ensuring that Denmark's energy supply is green. The target is that renewable natural gas, or RNG, accounts for 2/3 of Danish gas consumption by 2030 and 100% by 2040. Biogas plants play a large role in climate-smart agriculture in Denmark, managing animal manure, food waste, and agricultural residuals in an environmental sound manner. Known worldwide for its place in the wind sector, fewer people know that Denmark is also a global leader in the digester and biogas industry. With a national law that requires all municipalities in Denmark to better manage food waste, biogas plants will play an increasingly important role in managing these waste resources and producing more RNG. There's much to share with the US and global stakeholders from the Danish experience with biogas digesters and RNG, how Danish biogas became successful, and which challenges we had to conquer on the way. And we are always interested to learn from your experience. Our US Biogas Alliance, which includes 8 Danish companies, is an important part of our efforts to bring Danish knowledge and expertise to the American marketplace and engage with key American actors to learn from you. Another key element in these efforts are our memorandum of understanding with the US Department of Energy, the California Department of Food and Agriculture, and the City of Houston, that all have a biogas as a component. And we are exploring more partnerships, both in North America and around the world through the Danish-funded Biogas Go Global initiative, which we'll hear more about later in the program. As we wrestle globally with how to best mitigate the climate and environmental impacts of agriculture and waste management, we welcome a chance to share knowledge across the Atlantic. Only through shared efforts will we be able to combat the global threat of climate change. And biogas can play a significant role in that battle. Denmark leads the world in the percent of renewable natural gas in the national gas grid. New figures show that for the month of July this year, RNG from biogas accounted for almost 50% of total gas consumption in Denmark. That's a new record. The production of RNG in the Danish grid has been steadily increasing since 2012, when the government passed a national energy law that incentivized the production of RNG. Due in large part to these incentives, a growing number of biogas plants have been built with the combined efforts of farmers, government, private sector, and academia. And this collaborative approach has driven the increased development and use of innovative technologies for food waste handling, anaerobic digestion, and biogas treatment. While R&D production has been a primary driver in the growth of biogas plants, the production of fertilizer has been as important to the growth of the industry over time. Farmers have their animal manure treated and in return get a nutrient-rich organic fertilizer for their crop production. Biogas plants have also been a major factor in helping to reduce surface water contamination in the country due to better management of nutrients. I look very much forward to hearing about all the great learnings that come from this summit and to form stronger bonds with you in our common conquest towards greener energy and better utilization of our resources. Only through cooperation on opportunities such as biogas will we meet the growing challenge of climate change that faces us all. Thank you very much for your time.
Ambassador Wiesborg, thank you very much for taking the time to join us today. While I don't know if we will ever have a biogas digester at the embassy in DC, I want to recognize Ambassador Wiesborg for her leadership. We now have the largest solar panel array on an embassy in Washington, DC. And so we can strive towards other activities as well. I want to recognize my co-moderator for today before we start the next session, Klaus Mortensen. Klaus is a biogas business developer with Food and BioCluster Denmark, and also the director of the Biogas Go Global program. And Klaus will be joining me up here to help co-moderate and facilitate the question and answer session. With that, we are slightly ahead of schedule. But I think as long as our speakers are with us, that we will press ahead. And I will ask my technical colleagues here to let me know whether that's the case. Okay, wonderful. Well, I think we will keep moving forward. That way we will have more time for questions and answers at the end. A couple of administrative points while we are waiting. I invite you all to submit your questions and comments throughout the program, and we will get to as many of those as possible. So please use the function within Zoom if you have a particular question. Luckily, the sessions today are recorded and will be made available afterwards for either you, if you didn't get to see the whole program, or you want to share those with other people. So with that, I think we will start into our first session titled Biogas as a Driver for Climate and UN Sustainability Development Goals. We're very lucky to have 3 individuals. I will not go through their entire bios. You received those as part of the program that came out earlier. So I invite you to look at that if you'd like to have more information on that, on each of the speakers' background. Our first speaker today is John Hanselman. John is the founder and CEO of Vanguard Renewables, a US leader in farm-based organics to renewable energy. On a personal note, I became familiar with Vanguard very early in their evolution and was incredibly intrigued. I was at the US EPA AgStar program at that time. And when I heard about Vanguard and what they planned to do, I was very excited and I'm incredibly happy to have John here with us today to talk a bit about their company and how they've grown over time to be a leader in managing both manure and food waste in the United States. And so with that, I'll turn it over to you, John, to hear some comments and thoughts about your past and how we might use that to grow the industry moving forward. John?
And thank you for those kind words. It was a long time ago. It seems almost like forever when we first sat down and tried to think about the journey towards recycling organic materials into renewable natural gas. And so if you'll all bear with me for 1 second, I will pull up our presentation and see if I am technically competent to make this program work. It was, again, a wonderful and important vision that we kind of started with as to how we could bring a lot of the great learning from Europe and specifically Denmark to the United States to create a very different model for handling our waste streams. I think, as the ambassador so wonderfully put it, it's only waste if you waste it. And I think we saw that amazing resource and that abundant resource of organic materials in the United States as something that really could provide a wonderful short-term climate impact, and being able to create the infrastructure and education and learning to make that waste stream actually a wonderful resource for the United States is something that it was certainly our initial vision. It was not without its challenges. I think that the thing that we came to understand is that every corporation, every institution, every municipality, and actually every individual household, if you look at the great state of Vermont's efforts, every single different participant in that circular economy makes a decision literally at the end of the driveway of their facilities or homes as to how they're going to impact climate change. And for us, focusing on the organic materials that are produced either on a farm, at a manufacturing facility, within someone's own home, really was our goal to see if we could create very short-term, very meaningful impacts on climate change. And what we found, I think, through the process, and we'll talk about as we go through the slides today, is that it wasn't really just about creating the infrastructure and the machinery and the technology to process organic materials into waste. It's actually a far larger challenge, especially here in North America, which is to really create the education and the best practices and almost more importantly, I think, examples of a circular economy that were functional and able to now take that learning out to the greater population and let them understand that in fact there are answers to the climate issue, and those can be made really at your home and or at your place of work. And that for us has been the most exciting piece, is being able to enable very clearly each one of the components, and we'll talk in a second about all of the systems that we have in operation and that we're planning and building across the US. But most importantly, it's that good example, and being able to share that in our communities is the thing that has, I think, been the most important for us. We started 7 years ago and really in the northeastern part of the United States. We've got 6 operational facilities across the Northeast. We have another 6 systems under construction in Colorado, Nevada, and Georgia. We have another, actually now over 100 farms that we've signed into our program, and we're somewhere in the permitting and design and building piece with those farms. And the reason that it's working, and I think the reason that we're starting to find it, is that so many people are trying to understand how they can impact climate change. And to that end, we've been incredibly fortunate to have wonderful partners. We partnered with Dominion Energy to specifically address the large scale organic and agricultural waste on farms and convert that into renewable natural gas. We've actually formed now the Farm Powered Strategic Alliance. We'll talk about in more detail in the next slide about how we have brought some major corporate leaders in sustainability to the understanding of how their organic material can actually be turned into renewable energy. And most importantly, we've been working with the incredible farmers who are the backbone of the food supply in our United States. And those folks have been just at the core of everything we do. I think most people, I hope, on the call are familiar with how the process of anaerobic digestion works. But for those of you who aren't, really it's quite simple in design, much more complex actually in implementation, but it's just the collection of any organic material. And I think importantly in the United States, and we'll talk about it again in more detail later, but the material can be in any form, packaged, unpackaged, and really taking that material out to the farm, combining it with animal manure, turning that into what would be a 1 million gallon Instapot. We then cook that all for the better part of a month, and the gas kind of bubbles to the top, and we're able to extract that as renewable natural gas. And then, as the ambassador said, I have left with, actually, I think it was Minister Jorgensen, you're left with this wonderful high nutrient, low carbon fertilizer that replaces synthetic fertilizer on our farms. All of that, I think, is incredibly impactful and probably the most important thing we can do short term to really reverse the trend of climate change. A big part of our learning was that, in fact, excuse me, that what we needed to do was not just build the wonderful systems to do it, but really create an understanding across all of the corporate sector and the institutional sector that this is quite a successful program. And we were incredibly fortunate to spend time with folks at Starbucks and Unilever and the Dairy Farmers of America, all of whom who had made significant commitments to reducing their impact on climate change. And we simply were able to talk to them about taking those waste streams and turning them into renewable natural gas. That has been incredibly impactful and really, really create an operational partnership with all of those folks. In addition, we have another 3 large food manufacturers who have also signed that we'll be publicly announcing this month, and another 14 of the major food manufacturers from across the United States who will also be joining the Farm Power Strategic Alliance sometime before the end of the year. All of those members have the same goal, which is to try and take organic materials out of the waste stream, remove them from landfills and incinerators, and be able to take back that renewable natural gas to decarbonize their plant thermal operations. What we learned, in addition to creating the good stories, the best examples, is that we also need to build the vertical infrastructure that allows us to take any organic materials. The things that is unfortunately true is there really is no predecessor model in the United States for organics recycling. What we also understand is that Americans are very, very comfortable with the zero sort model, excuse me, of recycling, which they get from the regular recycling components in most of their communities, which is throw it into a singular bin and have that bin go off and be recycled. To that end, we are now building mechanical separation facilities as the front end to every facility that we build for food waste recycling across the United States. And that has also materially changed the way and the adoption rate for any corporation or institution or individual, because again, it's just one more bin at the end of the driveway. That turns out to be, I think, a wonderful model that Americans recognize and understand as part of their daily habits. And so by reducing the threshold and those barriers to entry, we think that's the critical next step of advancing the cause in the States. We're very fortunate, as I said earlier, to work with some of the greatest agricultural and dairy folks in the United States. One of our proudest moments this past year was being awarded the 2021 Outstanding Dairy Sustainability Award from the Dairy Innovation Council for our latest project in Vermont, in Salisbury, Vermont, just south of Middlebury, Vermont. That is a 180 ton a day food waste and 100 ton a day cow manure digester that is entirely directed towards creating renewable natural gas for the Vermont gas system. We have the first university or college in the United States that has decided to go 100% renewable natural gas. So their entire thermal load, which in the northern part of our country in Vermont is quite significant, will be sustained from this farm. That it was a remarkable commitment on their behalf. They have committed to acquire the gas, 100% of the gas that they need to heat and cool their campus for the next 20 years. And that example, those kind of shining examples of the things that we want to bring out to the rest of the United States. In addition to that, we also are taking the fertilizer that we're returning to the farm. We're actually in this part of Vermont, there's a significant phosphorus level in the ground waters of this area. And we are actually removing the phosphorus from the farm and moving it to a separate watershed, or actually out of the state in its entirety, to us to reduce the impact of the agricultural system in Vermont. And for that, I think we are almost as happy as our farm partners, who are really excited about being better stewards of land for the next generation. I will throw it back to the other speakers and let them chat about it, but we are honored to be here and really appreciate the chance to be able to participate in today's activities.
John, thank you very much for those remarks and talking about how Vanguard has been successful. If what I'm going to do is just ask one question here, and then we will save some additional time for after all the presenters have gone. But John, can you talk a bit more about how the relationship with Starbucks, Unilever, Dairy Farmers of America, and I know a growing group of companies that are looking to join the alliance. How do you see that playing out in practice?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I think the thing that has been most interesting to us is that The sustainability arm of every one of any US corporation has been successful in actually getting their entities to make wonderful commitments for the 2025, 2030, and 2050 kind of goals. What I think has been challenging to all of them is once you have acquired wind and solar, you've maybe installed batteries, you've addressed packaging, plant operations with electrical efficiency, the question really is what's the next step that you can take? And I think the wonderful comment by the ambassador about the fact that there's no such thing as waste, just displaced resources. What's wonderful is as we meet with folks, and we kind of originally meeting with Starbucks and Unilever and presenting that concept to them, it is remarkable how quickly it catches fire. And I think as every corporation and institution in the States is looking for a better pathway to the future. And I think as the examples of climate change are becoming so direct with wildfires and with floods, I think people are really starting to get it at their core. And if not, candidly, Wall Street is doing a remarkable job with the ESG movement in enforcing it and really asking every corporate entity that has made these commitments to live up to their commitments. And that's made it much easier for us to have these discussions.
Great, thanks, John. And to kind of amplify my earlier comments before John started to speak, when I first visited Vanguard's first project, boy, it must have been 10 years ago, probably. It was the Danish model before I even knew what the Danish model meant, which is co-digesting animal manure and food waste and other residuals. And again, I'm so pleased, and congratulations on helping to move that model forward, John. I hope
things look a little different now, don't they?
They sure do. They sure do. I guess if you stay around long enough, they turn for the positive, and it's due to efforts like Vanguard Renewables. So thank you. I hope you'll be able to stay on with us after the other speakers. We'll have a bit more Q&A after that. So, John, thank you very much. My pleasure. Our next presenter is Christian Eckenauer, and for many of us in the United States, we may not be familiar with Arlo Foods, but they are the 5th largest dairy cooperative in the world, and have over 12,000 dairy farmers that are part of that, and over 1 million cows. Arlo is seen in Europe as one of the leading sustainability companies in the food sector, and we're very pleased to have Christian with us today. Christian is the Vice President for Corporate Responsibility for Arlo Foods, and he is going to share some insight and thoughts about some of Arlo's activities around biogas. Christian, over to you. Christian, we hang on 1 minute. I think your microphone might be muted. I don't know if it's on your side. Cannot hear yet.
How about this?
Yes, very good.
That works. Sorry about that. That was me pushing the wrong buttons. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak here. And I was fortunate to listen in to John's fascinating presentation about Vanguard. So that was really inspirational. Let me just share a presentation with you. I have a few slides. So how do I do this? Entire screen, share. And then share, and here we go. Can you see this?
We can. Yes, we can.
That's wonderful. So Arlo Foods, as you just mentioned, it's a cooperative owned by 9,400 cooperative members across Denmark, Sweden, UK, Germany, Belgium, Luxembourg, and Holland. and they together produce 14 billion kilos of milk and a lot of manure. And we want to treat that manure in the best possible way. And one of the ways to make sure that we recirculate all the good nutrients in the manure is to put it through a biogas facility. But let me just explain a little bit about Arlo Foods. So we're a cooperative, and that means that we take responsibility for the whole value chain. So we have the cows at one end, and we have consumers at the other end, and then we collect the milk from the farmers, we process it at the dairy, and then we distribute it to our consumers. And that means that if we want to decarbonize our value chain, then we have ample opportunities to use biogas, both at farm level, at logistical level, at operations levels. So that gives us a lot of opportunity, and also to make use of industrial side streams and food waste from other sources, bringing it back into good use. We have set a couple of targets that are relevant for our use of biogas. One is that we want to become carbon net zero by 2050. And because 2050 is a long time away, then we've said that we want to reduce our emissions by 30% through what we call a science-based target, to make sure that we are aligned with the Paris Agreement. And at the same time, we want to reduce our food waste, of course. So the 30% applies both to our operations and logistics and packaging, but also per kilo of milk for the farmer's milk. And in order to move us forward, we've set 3 principles that we want to apply in order to progress towards our targets. One is that we want to go from fossil to renewable. So taking out all fossil sources, both in relation to energy and packaging and fuels. And here biogas is one option. And then we want to pursue circular economy options. And that's particularly relevant for our milk. So we don't want to waste our milk and the water, but also the carbon, the phosphor, and the nitrogen. So with the phosphor and the nitrogen, we got to make sure that we distribute that to the best possible use and that we don't waste it. And then we have the third principle that we want to make collaboration in the value chain, because we know that we cannot solve all the challenges towards becoming carbon net zero ourselves. This is our total emissions, and you can see that 86% of all our greenhouse gas emissions relate to the farm. So this is really where the battle must stand. And then we have significantly less emissions from our operations, logistics, and packaging. And making sure that we get the most out of the manure from the farm is really one of our priorities. So we have, in order to reduce emissions at farm level, we have developed what we call a climate check. So this is a model where farmers, they sign up voluntarily, but incentivized. So they get a euro cent per kilo of milk in order to participate in the program. And then they answer approximately 200 questions in relation to their farm. Everything in relation to the feed, the manure use, and the cows and the milk, and the yield on field. And then on that basis, we can calculate the CO2 footprint per kilo of milk of the farmer. And the farmer can benchmark his or her performance against relevant peers. And the farmer will then get a bespoke visit by an advisor to go through the numbers and point to different actions the farmer can take in order to reduce his or her footprint per kilo of milk. So a very detailed and thorough data-based model. And we can say that almost 96% of all our farmers and the milk has participated now. So we have a very good baseline, and we have a very good idea about what actually works. So we sit on what I would estimate to be probably the world's largest database on farm sustainability data. And one of the measures you can use here is for the farmer to reduce his or her CO2 footprint per kilo of milk, is to supply their manure to biogas. And we can see that from the answers, approximately 11% of all our farmers actually do produce biogas today. So in Germany, for instance, there's been a very generous program in place to promote the use of local biogas facilities on farm. It's not so widespread in Denmark, where the government has more favored bigger industrial-based biogas facilities. And some of the farmers also produce green electricity with wind and solar. So then they're not just supplying food, they're also a relatively big energy supplier. Some of the levers that we use in order to reduce emissions on farm is of course related to efficiency, to green electricity, to the feed that the farmers use for their cows, but also whether they supply their manure to a biogas plant or not. It also boils down to breeding and how much carbon you can sequester in the ground and how you treat your peat soils, and whether you potentially, when it becomes available, use green fertilizer. And then we have some additional levers under investigation, namely feed additives, green tractor fuels, and how to store more carbon in the ground through the use of biochar, where you take biomass and take it through a pyrolysis function. In our operations, we look at energy optimization, we look at using green electricity, and then of course we also look at using biogas and other new fuels. So today we have a number of sites using biogas. We purchase approximately 41 billion cubic meters of biogas. We purchase it directly from local farm operations, and we purchase it from big industrial biogas facilities, and we purchase it with certificates, so bio-natural gas. And we use it for producing electricity, and we use it for heat generation. So a different supply basis and a different use basis depending on what is most favorable from an economic point of view. In our logistics, we also use biogas. So today we have a number of trucks running in Denmark and in Sweden and in the UK on biogas for distribution purposes. We haven't engaged yet with long and heavy fuels, heavy transport yet, but that hopefully will come in the future as well. So these were some of the uses that we have of biogas, and we think that biogas should have a prominent place in the future energy mix, because you can make sure that you make use of both food waste and household waste if you sort it out well, and industrial waste streams that cannot be used for anything else but energy production. So I think that's it for me from now. Thank you very much. I'll go stop sharing here.
That was fantastic. It's not surprising to me that you all are the leaders in data collection and benchmarking. That's really impressive. And I think through some of the things the ambassador mentioned, some of our existing MOUs and some of our other relationships, we need to find a way to continue to share that information. And so thank you very much for your remarks and all of your efforts. If I could ask you one question right now. Arlo Garden is Arlo's quality assurance program, and it is an important factor in Arlo Foods' strategy. With Arlo Garden, Arlo takes responsibility for the milk to ensure it is produced in a responsible manner and is of a high quality standard. As part of this program, you allow the use of digestate from biogas plants to be used on the fields where the feed is produced. Can you elaborate a bit on the considerations Arlo has done in the past with regards to ensure that the fertilizer, or what some call digestate, from biogas plants is safe? How is this done from an operational point of view?
Yeah, thank you very much. I mean, we don't want to spread anything on the farmers' fields that is not safe. So we want to avoid toxic material, we want to avoid batteries, and we want to avoid plastic materials and microplastic, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the basis of everything, because that will nurture the ground and make the grass grow that the cows will eat, and that generates the milk. So we've got to make sure that that place is sacred and safe. So the farmers, they need to document from which biogas facility they actually get their degassed manure. And that company should also be able to document from which sources it gets its material. So we are very keen to make sure that nothing bad goes into the biogas facility that will not be eliminated during the process.
Great, thank you, Christian. That's incredibly important, I think, for our U.S. stakeholders to hear, is that Arlo does allow for that practice, but with strong considerations and strong regulations around it. So thank you very much. And I think we will move on to our third speaker, and we'll come back with some more questions here in a few minutes. Last but not least, in our first panel, again, we're very lucky to have Stuart Leith. Stuart is the Chief Sustainability Officer for Smithfield Foods. For those who aren't familiar with Smithfield, I would be surprised, but they're the world's largest pork producer. And in his role, he leads the global sustainability and environmental compliance programs for the world's largest pork producer, Smithfield. And for those who may not be familiar, Denmark is also well known for its pork production at not quite the same level, but it actually makes up a big part of the agriculture exports in the country. And with that, Stuart, I will turn it over to you for your remarks. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks so much, Chris. And I think you all, your team was going to add my slides, and I just have 2 or 3 or 4 to, and you all would advance those for me.
Yep. Give us a minute while we queue those up, Stuart, if you want to say anything in particular while the slides come up.
Yeah, happy to. And thank you for the introduction. We are in the pork business, make a lot of ham, bacon, and sausage. Smithfield, our footprint is quite large. We operate coast to coast in the United States and also in Europe. We have substantial operations in Poland and Romania and Hungary. We literally are a vertically integrated company, so we operate from literally farm to fork. We have a number of company-owned and operated farms, but also and mainly contract with thousands of family farmers to raise animals for us under long-term contracts. We have been in the sustainability business for quite some time. We pioneered sustainability in the protein segment in the United States. I start with a slide because mainly to give you some perspective about why we are so aggressive in this RNG space, and I'll be talking about that in a moment. We have a platform at sustainability at Smithfield now that's it's a I guess not traditional ESG type of platform, but it operates under 7 different pillars now. Each one of these pillars has a big goal and target attached to it. Each one has metrics and hard targets over 5 and 10-year periods. Underlying all those things is the shared values concept that we've adopted several years ago. If you go to the next slide, part of our climate strategy and our environmental strategy is really focused on carbon reduction. This goes back to actually, I guess, 2013, 2014, where we partnered with the Environmental Defense Fund and one of our large customers to do some work in the grain supply chain to adopt precision farming and optimization of fertilizer in our supply chain, going back to 2013 and into the next 5 years. So we adopted a initial carbon reduction goal of 25% by the year 2025 and 2016. This is a absolute reduction, and it's a scope 1 and 2 and 3. Just this past year, we sort of I guess increased the commitments for ourselves under a science-based target commitment of 30% by year 2030. Again, across our entire value chain, and then we also committed to be carbon negative on our company-owned operation. That includes farms and facilities and transportation. Next slide, please. So we've been measuring our footprint for quite some time, and similar to my colleagues on the panel, we much of our footprint is actually on the farm level, both grain farms and feed milling, manure management. This is actually a renewed carbon footprint that we just got back from the University of Minnesota, who we partner with on these things. We actually have, because of these projects that I'll talk about here, have actually reduced our carbon footprint quite substantially over the last 5 or 6 years. The manure management aspect, 27% under the models today. That started out at 43% actually, and then on the processing, transportation, and other areas, that's also substantially reduced from originally when it was 20 to 25%. So these are having these projects, which I'll share with you, are having some real benefits. Next slide, please. And we've overall reduced our carbon footprint 13% from a 2010 baseline to date. And my last slide here is really one I'll spend the time with. What do our projects look like? This is actually a photograph of farms that we operate. These are actually contract operations in the high desert in Utah. These farms have the typical farm now for RNG for Smithfield looks similar to this. You see in the back of that farm a digester, which takes the place of an open anaerobic lagoon, which is typical in many areas where we operate. The digester, the manure moves into that anaerobic digester, similar to what you saw with the dairy situation. And the anaerobic microbes create methane and mostly methane, but also CO2 and some other gases. That is transferred actually to a central conditioning unit, which actually takes out some of the properties such as CO2 and hydrogen sulfide, and then puts it into a direct injection into a pipeline where it can be used as a fuel. In this particular picture, you can see this is one barn set, but you can see off in the distance little white figures. Those are additional barn sets. We actually have 26 farms and barn sets that have these systems, and they're all tied together through gas lines to the central conditioning unit. So altogether, we have close to 250,000 spaces in this valley producing renewable natural gas, and it's been quite successful. We actually operated today primarily under two joint ventures. One is with a company named Raceline Energy in Missouri, and Raceline has been at this business for quite some time. And we have a joint venture called Monarch, and Monarch is operating on our farms, company farms in Missouri, over the last 10 years, and we have 9 operating units up there, and it's close to 700 to 800,000 spaces producing high quality natural gas today. And this picture here is a project with our aligned joint ventures with Dominion Energy, and we are operating today with them from the East Coast to the West. We actually have operations underway, construction projects in North Carolina and Virginia, and also in Arizona, and then Utah, as you see right here. The benefits, of course, and I think we've talked about this, but the benefits of this are the reduction of methane. Methane is 25 times more potent as a climate indicator in carbon. It improves the treatment capacity of the farms. It improves stormwater. In the East Coast, where we have, and like everywhere else in the world, we're having extreme weather events. It helps in terms of having covered digesters and other protections so we don't have to manage stormwater on our farms that might go into a lagoon otherwise. It's taking fugitive emissions away from communities. And for our farmers, we're actually working with our contract farmers to provide them a gate price for the gas that are produced on the farm. And that we believe is incentivizing farmers to be as efficient as possible with their own particular farms, and as a way to participate in the gas pricing and the marketing of that gas ultimately down the road. So I'll stop there, Chris, and I'm happy to take any questions at the end or as part of the panel.
I mentioned earlier that I 10 years ago, got to visit Vanguard Renewables. Probably 15 years ago, I came down to Smithfield when I was with EPA and talked about biogas and digesters back at that point. And so again, it's another wonderful story, and thank you for all of your efforts to advance this sector. I'm going to go outside of biogas just a little bit here, Stuart, but is Smithfield exploring other carbon reduction or sustainability efforts along with biogas?
Yes, Chris, we are. I mean, we have a number of things underway, and I mentioned that the carbon negative commitment that we made. Part of that is going to be continued work in which I know you're familiar with in terms of our grain supply and reducing carbon and fertilizer optimization efforts and precision farming. We're undertaking transportation logistics changes over the last few years that have optimized those issues, using sludge and the residuals from our lagoons as well, and replacing chemical fertilizers is an important part. And then finding another mix for our energy use on our processing plants. We're entering into virtual power agreements, looking for wind and solar as well. So all those things combined are contributing to the mix.
Great, thank you, Stuart. Well, we have about 10 minutes or so to have some questions for the panel, and I mentioned before we'll throw some questions out and ask whoever would like to respond to them first, and then we'll kind of go through the panel. I mentioned before the IPCC report and the increasing attention on methane. I'm curious from each of your perspectives with a short answer. Are you seeing that same on the ground? Are you seeing the same attention being paid, and will this be something sustainable that we'll see kind of on a global basis? John, could I ask you that first? And
yeah, I mean, I think our efforts through the Farm Power Strategic Alliance have been really indicative to us of what we see as a very consistent trend and desire on behalf of, I think, major corporations and institutions to really see if waste recycling could be a part of their solution.
okay, Christian?
Absolutely. I think it's important with the focus on methane as well, as it is a potent greenhouse gas. And I think biogas is definitely one of the measures that we need to leverage in order to pursue a fast reduction in the methane emissions. But agriculture is not the only emitter of biogas, so you got to look at waste as well. And energy production. So those are the two main focus areas in my mind, because there you do not get a product when you emit your methane, but when you produce food, you actually do get a product with nutrition in it, and it comes with some emissions. But focus on waste and energy production, first of all, to minimize methane emissions.
Great. Stuart, anything to add to that?
The only thing I would say is I think sometimes the meat industry is a lot of folks like to point their finger at the meat industry and as a major cause of climate change. And I think, I mean, in terms of large scale modern farming that you see in the United States and in Europe, I don't know that always measures up. But I do think that folks expect us all, companies and otherwise, to do their part to reduce carbon, and methane is such a large contributor that you get a lot of bang for the buck by reducing methane emissions and making a usable product out of it. It's sort of a win for everything, and I think it's a good story. So I see these things increasing interest over time for sure.
That's what I've always enjoyed about the sector is you don't have to make up the story. It's just sitting there and you just have to tell it. So I appreciate that. Maybe this one's a bit more for John and Stuart, but you both have relationships with utilities, and that's a fairly new development in the United States. Can you put a couple of words around what that relationship has been like? Has it helped move things forward? But yeah, let's start, John, if you don't mind starting again.
Sure, and I think there's a question in the chat room also about this as well, and I think Christian actually touched on it, which is over and over, folks are looking at pathways to decarbonization. And what has been most remarkable for me, I spent the better part of a decade on the solar side of the world before coming over to anaerobic digestion. And solar was slow to really embrace the utility side of the equation. What's been most intriguing to us is the natural gas industry, I think, understanding that it is 40% of all the electricity that's generated in the United States is from natural gas. 38% of all of the home fuel heating and cooking fuel is natural gas. That will take decades to decarbonize and or to replace. And I think so the short-term highest impact goal is to see if we can decarbonize the fossil supply of natural gas. And I think they recognize that as much as we do. So what has been incredibly interesting to us is that the natural gas industry, when we go to meet and we're speaking with different utilities, local distribution companies, and midstream energy suppliers across the US, and every single one of those entities has a renewable natural gas group now that is looking to try and accelerate that process. There is Public Utility Commission applications, I think in now 13 states, actually looking for incorporation, different methodologies to incorporate renewable natural gas and to accelerate the actual creation of RNG. And that's wonderful. It is something that's been really a very different change from the electric side of the world, and something that we're really continuously surprised and pleased with.
Great. Stuart, anything you'd like to add from that, or?
Well, I think, and we have similar partners, John and I. I mean, we both work with Dominion Energy, and as a coincidence, Dominion is based in Virginia, just like Smithfield is, and so we named the joint venture Align because we kind of felt at least the time in 2018 we were in the food business and the farming and the pork business. And not so much in the energy business, and Dominion was not in the farming and food business, and they were in the energy business. And it seemed like we, linking those two specialties and up together made a lot of sense. And our teams have been working very well together to put these projects. I mentioned in my talk, that we have projects going in Virginia, in North Carolina, and all the way to the West Coast. And so it's working great.
That's great. And Christian, I'm not sure if you have any direct involvement with a utility, but otherwise I'll ask you a different question. Obviously, you've made a lot of investments in innovation farms in the UK, biogas trucks in Denmark, as you mentioned. Can we expect more biogas related investments from Arlo's side, whether that's in Denmark or elsewhere in Europe? I think you just have one plant in North America, but of course we don't want to leave that out. And kind of what role would Arlo play in this over time?
I think our role is to advocate for capacity of biogas being installed, and to advocate for good economic conditions for establishing a biogas plant and distributing the biogas. And then we want to use the biogas in applications where it makes sense for us. So that would be either in transportation or in our dairy sites. And depending very much on the business case, would it be for electricity generation or for heat generation? But that depends really on the business case. And our role going forward is really advocating for biogas to become a significant part of the energy mix in the future, because it makes such a lot of good sense, as we've just been talking about, for recirculation of resources. And we engage at a European level in the European Sustainable Biomethane Alliance, together with also Nature Energy that we're going to hear from just in a minute, to showcase some of the case stories for the use of biogas across the value chain, from biogas producers to off-takers.
Great.
And I think that we will probably not encourage our farmers or make demands on them to invest in biogas facility on their farm. It's a decision that the farmers need to take themselves, but we would be happy to facilitate good opportunities if the facilities can be run by somebody else than the farmer, because the farming operations in Europe are far smaller than in the US. And therefore here the farmer typically needs to concentrate on his cows and the milk production.
Great. Well, as always, time has run short. I could keep this going all day, but I know you all have important things to do. Thank you very much for sharing some of your insights and for spending some time with us, and keep doing the great work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Next up, to keep us on schedule here, as I said, we're joined by Klaus Mortensen. Klaus is the director of the Biogas Go Global program, as well as being a business development manager at Food and Bio Cluster Denmark. Klaus and I have had a chance over the last few years to get to know each other. He's a wealth of information, been in the biogas industry here in Denmark for upwards of 10 years. And Klaus is going to give us an overview of how the biogas model has scaled here in Denmark and some of the lessons that can be taken to other countries. Klaus?
Thank you very much, Chris. Thank you very much for the introduction. I'll just start by briefly giving a short introduction to Food and Bio Cluster Denmark. Afterwards, I will be talking about this quiet revolution of biomethane in Denmark. Food and Bio Cluster Denmark is the national cluster for food and agriculture, but also bioresources and hence biogas production. We are a non-profit organization with 300 members and around 2,500 organizations in our network, working for innovation, knowledge sharing, business development in Denmark and internationally. So just a brief introduction to Denmark. Denmark is a small country compared to most of the states in the US. But we highly agricultural and food producing country, relying on export. But also we also rely on a good environment, and we are, as you can see on the picture here, a map of Denmark. We are a country where there's a lot of lakes and streams, which means that the high density livestock production and the environment, we have to find solutions for that being possible. So a bit on the renewable energy and the circularity. We have a strong and powerful tradition in politics to ensure a long-term commitment to the goals we set and the policy we do. Also with regards to triple helix, we are used to work together. It's also a small country, a small industry, but there is a lot of cooperation between universities, academia, the rest of academia, industry, and also government. And we together with other countries have set an ambitious goal, becoming climate neutral in 2050 and reaching the 70% by 2030. And that is supported by both the energy and the agricultural sector, which is quite important. On the map here, you see basically the Danish gas grid, and that's an important driver for biomethane production in Denmark. And just recently, even though this system dates back to the early 80s, where we began exploring many of the gas and oil opportunities in the North Sea, in the western part of Denmark. That's a system that has been really used to make biomethane as a commodity, rather than before when we utilized it only for combined heat and power. So actually that development we've seen the last 7 to 8 years, I'll describe that later, that's basically made possible due to good cooperation between the different grid owners and the biogas sector. And just recently we also announced most of Denmark is covered by a distribution network or a local network of gas grid. But in the eastern part of Denmark, there was no grid until recently, where there's the minister, Dan Jørgensen, announced that they will support the investment in a new gas grid down there. And why is that? Besides this being a quite dense area for food production, there is also a few big food companies, including a sugar factory. And they, as part of this green policy and the climate goals we have, need to turn green, but they also need support for enabling that high temperature process heat they need. So they need to have access to green gas. So a new gas grid will be installed down there. So we talk about this Danish biogas model. What is it? Basically, it's circular economy, it's technology and process, and it's ownership and management. I think that what to some extent differs biogas models we see in different countries. So in Denmark, it is a cooperation between cities and the rural areas, supplying food, but also energy back and forth. But it's also a way of producing fertilizer. So in Denmark, we have a good tradition of using liquid fertilizer and digestate compared to other countries. And as one of the questions in the chat before is, what about is utilizing food waste as a digestate through an AD plant? Is that safe? It is considered safe in Denmark, and it is used. Another question in the chat was also the economy of scale and how big are the plants, and compared to other countries, we see quite big plants in Denmark. Recent 6 to 7 years, we've seen plants with more than 500,000 tons of biomass input. Mainly, the main process used here is the thermophilic process. Often the plants are co-owned by farmers, which is a good thing, because then you have a security of biomass suppliers, but also the offtake of the digestate. So these long-term contracts and partnerships, that reduces basically the risk. And as also Christian from Arlo mentioned before, the farmer should focus on being a farmer. So we believe in economy of scale in order to make sure that you have time for the operation of the plant. So that is not a part-time job. So this is the development we've seen from 0 to 21% in 7 years. So right now, as of August 2021, around 21%, 22% is actually green gas in the grid. So we had around 56 plants connected, producing 14 petajoule of biomethane. The drivers are, of course, the policies, but also selling of the gas, the subsidies from the government, and the different green certificates. And the development of the certificates we've seen is quite interesting, because there's a lot of demand for that outside Denmark, actually. Some of the goals in the near future is that we expect, the Danish agency expects up to 40% of the gas consumption in Denmark will be renewable natural gas, biomethane, and maybe by 2030 that be 80%. And that actually showcased Denmark as the country in Europe with the highest share of renewable natural gas in the gas grid. And we are the second largest producer of biomethane in Europe, only beaten by Germany. One of the key parts in the Danish biogas model is that we are going to use wastes and not food for biomethane. This is the composition. As you see, the majority of the input we use for biogas production is livestock manure of different sorts, but there are also parts from household waste, but also industrial food waste, and that's together with straw is some of the inputs that we'll see becoming more and more normal. That's where there is a huge resource, as long as it's a waste. Right now, the biogas plants are allowed to have 12% of energy crops in the mix, that number will gradually go down towards 2025. So again, we are focusing on using waste rather than food. And then this is one of the, besides energy, we have to take into consideration the environmental footprints and the climate impacts from biogas production, and why this makes sense in a society point of view as well. And this is a brand new, quite new report from Morton University stating that if you apply the Danish biogas model with the assumptions you see to the left, it's likely that you receive close to 100 kilos of CO2 equivalent saving per ton of biomass. And this is exactly why governments around the world should support biogas. Also, with regards to you can't really electrify everything. We talked about the heat for industrial purposes, but also the gas for the heavy transport. Then many of these plants are placed in rural areas where there's basically where every job counts. And this is a study from Nature Energy. We'll hear from them later, but this is a typical Nature Energy plant, quite big. But if you see the number of jobs created on the plant, but also indirect and direct, in this case, with this plant at Korskro, 133 jobs are created. And that is a lot in this part of Denmark. So also that is one of the reasons why biogas should be considered one of the let's say one of the tools for also creating jobs and maintaining jobs in these areas of the country. And actually, biogas is the renewable energy source creating most jobs per $1 million invested. That's also something we should have in mind. So how did the sector scale, and what can we share from Denmark is that I think some of the stuff we talked about before, the cooperation between academia, industry, and government, I think that's one of the keys for scaling the sector, setting ambitious targets, but also having the policy framework and doing the implementation together with the industry is quite important. I think also Nature Energy had played a really huge role in the Danish biogas sector, and was beforehand a gas trading company, which could see that in 2050 they will basically be out of business if they couldn't convert into a green business model. So that's one of the reasons why the sector scaled, but also the stick and carrot, meaning that the close cooperation with industry, government, academia on innovation, promoting innovation to reach these process optimization on the plants. That's quite key. And one of the examples is this biogas task force established in 2013, where Triple Helix got together in order to reach the same goal of optimizing. So that was part of the subsidy scheme, was also to sit down and work together on establishing a sustainable biogas sector in Denmark. So what role does biomethane play in the future here? And as you can see in this, we expect in the near future that more gas will be used in the heavy industry and in the heavy transport sector. And this requires quite a lot of innovation, especially within utilization of straw. That's something that we in Food and Biocluster Denmark working quite a lot with. If we focus on innovation here, we've set out at least four different areas where we think that the industry needs to develop further. That is within process optimization, continuous using data, biology management, and new technologies. but it's also within the pre-treatment of straw food waste and all more difficult bioresources available. Only through that we are able to produce the amount of gas that we need in order to reach our 2050 goal. And then this is where also I think biogas plays an important role, is that when you upgrade, when you clean the gas for biomethane, you have CO2. And that CO2 is currently being used in Denmark for food ingredients. There is one biogas plant supplying CO2 for a soft drink producer. But it can also be used to let's say, make renewable electricity storable in the gas grid. And that's where we will see a huge development in Denmark over the coming years. The first few pilot plants and demonstration plants have successfully implemented, and we are now seeing the first large-scale power to X and power to gas plants being invested in. So that's a really interesting development, and that's the next step for biogas in Denmark. And then last but not least, we have to remind ourselves that the data state is a resource, and that's what we also see is that farmers are asking for more customized fertilizer for specific crop applications. We are Biogas Go Global is a platform for knowledge sharing and gaining insights and network in the US and Denmark and elsewhere. We have developed together with our partners, the Danish Energy Agency and the Danish Foreign Ministry in North America, 2 reports, one on biogas policy in Denmark throughout the last 8 years, and one on biogas production, a 50-page, easy to read report on technologies from Denmark and solutions, and it's available in Chinese, English, French, and Spanish and South Korean. And then, of course, we work closely with our 8 companies in the North American Biogas Alliance as well. Some of the upcoming events that you are welcome to sign up to is 2 in Danish and one in English. The first one on the 15th of September is the production and utilization of CO2 on the biogas plants. Then we have another event on the 11th of November on data state and how to use that better. And then on the 27th of September, we are actually have the opportunity to share a brand new report on methane leakages from biogas plants, which is basically one of the topics that the biogas task force was looking into. So this is available for all, so please sign up. The presentation will be available for you later. So thank you very much for your time, and feel free to reach out if you need knowledge, contacts, or if we can be helpful in any way. Thanks.
Thank you, Klaus. You know, since I joined the Trade Council 2.5 years ago and started learning more about the growth of this sector in Denmark, I've been incredibly impressed. You went over a lot of material. I'm going to ask you to try, if knowing what you know now after studying the US biogas market and our kind of landscape here, recognizing that it's pretty complex, are there 1 or 2 things that you would suggest as changes, whether it's technology or policy, that could help accelerate the biogas sector in the United States?
That's a really good question. I think what is important that we share knowledge. I think one of the things that we can learn from the US is the trading of gas, where I think we're, from a farmer's perspective, we recognize digestate as a full high quality fertilizer, and that I think we've proven that, for instance, food waste can be used in a safe way. Been working in several other countries. that is what we see, that diet estate is not often considered as a resource, and more like maybe a problem. I think there's a lot of knowledge sharing there that can be done.
Great, and I would agree that one of the things that I think is impressive is the co-digestion model. It's something that we struggle with in the United States a bit, and I think there is a lot of data, a lot of information and the knowledge that can be shared there, so that we can not only get the energy value out of that resource, which is going to grow, but also be able to recognize the nutrient value of that. That's of course all predicated on the fact that we run very professional operations, that we get clean feedstock for food waste. And so one last quick question. I know we're running a minute or so over, but can you talk a little bit more about the role that the farmers play in the projects in Denmark?
Of course, they as mentioned, they play an important role as a feedstock supplier to the plants. We also see, as mentioned, they co-invest, and they also are making sure that the circular economy is possible through the use of the different resources. So they play a really vital role, and have played throughout many years in the Danish biogas sector, a really important role.
Great. Thank you very much, Klaus. I appreciate your comments. And with that, we'll go on to our last panel for the day, titled "How Do We Grow Biogas in the US and Globally?" We're again honored to have three excellent presenters, all experts and leaders in the biogas sector in their own right. And we'll start with Charlotte Morton. Charlotte currently serves as the chief executive of the World Biogas Association, a role that she took over relatively recently, as I understand. And she was very instrumental in forming the World Biogas Association back in 2016. However, she's been involved in the biogas industry since joining the Anaerobic Digestion and Bioresources Association back in 2009. I've had the pleasure of meeting Charlotte at a couple of different events over the years. And Charlotte, we really appreciate your time and look forward to hearing some of your thoughts and comments. Charlotte, over to you.
Well, thanks, Chris. It's a pleasure to be here, and many thanks for inviting me to join you. I'm just going to try and do my best to share my screen. Just give me a minute. Competence is not my top skill. Right. Hopefully you can see my screen now. I'll take that as not a no. So
yes, we have it, Charlotte. Very good.
Great, thanks. So yes, I am the chief executive of the World Biogas Association, which was set up in 2016, primarily to ensure that the world knows how important biogas really is for decarbonising. We are the Global Trade Association for the biogas, landfill gas and anaerobic digestion sectors. And I just realized I need to move on my slide here, and I just got to work out how to do that. How do I? There we go. We are an official observer with the UN FCCC, a member of the CTCN, CCAC, GMI, and a partner of the C40 Cities Network. In order to help with the education challenge, we cooperate with organizations such as the Food and Agriculture Organization, UNEP, the IEA, and the EU to help get recognition of the enormous potential that we are all aware that this industry can deliver. Now, since today's event is meant to celebrate biogas and its role in the green transition, my next two slides are very much focused on demonstrating why biogas is absolutely critical. It's been made clear already today that fundamentally biogas is a key waste management solution. Humans, directly or indirectly, generate over 105 billion tons of organic wastes globally every year, all of which release harmful methane and other greenhouse gas emissions directly into the atmosphere as they decompose. These organic wastes include food waste, sewage and garden wastes, food and drink processing waste, and farm and agricultural wastes. However, today, we are only treating and recycling 2% of those 105 billion tons. The rest are emitting harmful methane emissions. Now, by managing all organic waste as important bioresources through AD and complementary technologies to generate biogas, biofertilizers, bio-CO2, and other valuable bioproducts, we can cut global greenhouse gas emissions by 10% by 2030, subject, of course, to us starting now. It's also important to note that biogas helps to decarbonize the hardest to decarbonize sectors of waste management, agriculture, heat, and transport. From the perspective of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, biogas also makes a significant contribution to 9 of the 17 UN SDGs, such as zero hunger, affordable and clean energy, clean water and sanitation, sustainable cities and communities. And also importantly, especially considering the current global crisis, biogas generates employment. We estimate that 11 to 15 million jobs globally could be created in the biogas industry alone if we're going to achieve our potential by 2030. And thinking about our potential, in terms of energy from currently available major feedstocks in the world, that potential is in the range of just over 10,000 to 14,000 terawatt hours. That's enough to meet 6 to 9% of the world's primary energy consumption, and can be used in the form of heat and electricity, or upgraded to biomethane to be used as heat or vehicle fuel. When used as electricity, it has the potential to meet around a fifth of the electricity consumed in the world. If the energy is used as biomethane, it can substitute around 1,000 to 1,400 billion cubic meters of natural gas, which is roughly equivalent to around a third of current natural gas consumption. Now, while natural gas has indeed got lower emissions than its solid fuel counterparts, it is still a fossil fuel which adds carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. So just to give you an idea of where the industry is at today, in 2019, the WBA published its Global Potential of Biogas report. And just to give you a quick summary there, in 2016, there were around 50 million microdigesters, of which 42 million were in China and just shy of 5 million in India, with the rest being in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. These, of course, play a very important role in rural areas of developing countries, where they're an integral part of farming, waste management, and energy and food security. They also help improve air quality and the health of millions who use the gas to cook with rather than burning wood from local forests. At a larger scale, globally in 2016, there were around 132,000 small, medium, and large-scale digesters, of which over 110,000 in China and 18,000 in Europe. And there were over 700 upgrading plants producing biomethane, of which the majority are in Europe, with significant market demand for renewable natural gas in USA, China, India, Japan, and South Korea. In 2016, again, the industry generated over 87 terawatt hours of electricity worldwide and was employing just over 344,000 people directly or indirectly. However, as I said, that is just 2% of our full potential. And not surprisingly, given their population sizes, the countries with the greatest potential are the US, India, and China. The industry is fortunately growing rapidly. Year-on-year growth is estimated to be 7%, with its value predicted to rise to $110 billion by 2025. Whoops. Now, in our latest report, Biogas Pathways to 2030, both of these reports are downloadable on our website. We made a few key recommendations in terms of what the ideal policy framework would be to enable the industry to achieve its full potential, broadly summarized here. So while the industry is maturing, the generation of biogas for CHP, biomethane for grid injection, and biomethane for transport should be supported with direct government payments in the form of a tariff. Targeted innovation funding should be directed towards increasing biogas yields so that innovation can support the reduction of costs and increase the revenue of AD projects, making plants more viable independently from subsidy. Grant funding should also be made available for the development of carbon capture, utilization and storage, CCUS, on new and existing biomethane plants. But as the industry matures and innovation improves the financial model, tariff support can be tapered away in the place of more market-based mechanisms to support the growing AD industry. And to conclude, given the enormous potential of the biogas industry and the huge need to deliver it this decade, we've talked quite a lot today already about the focus on methane and our ability to contribute to methane reduction. How are we going to achieve it? And in particular, how are we going to achieve it fast? So in our Biogas Pathways to 2030 report, we listed the policy mechanisms that should deliver it, which are broadly, again, listed here on this slide. Clearly, fossil fuel subsidies make a very unfair competitive situation for biogas companies. So the removal of all fossil fuel support mechanisms. Clearly, net zero emissions targets by 2050 are very important, but in particular, I think we need specific biogas targets in energy and climate plans by 2030, so that we are focusing very much on the closer target. Separate food waste collections for citizens and food waste management requirements for businesses are also vital to ensure we're getting the food waste out of the waste management system. And importantly here, by managing food waste, you get an additional 3%, which is achieved just by people being able to better see how much they're wasting and take action to reduce it. We also need to see AD specified as the preferred method of treatment for organic wastes. And that's because AD gets the most value out of those resources. We need to see investment in improving or building sanitation infrastructure, renewable energy incentives, and policies which enable the safe trading and use of digestate, nutrient recovery plans for farms, sustainability and greenhouse gas criteria for agricultural production, and government spending on biomethane infrastructure. And if we can have all of those by tomorrow, that would make this industry even more exciting than it is. But I'm delighted to have been part of this webinar today, looking at quite how much of exciting work is already happening and the very exciting business models that are working in quite challenging financial situation to make biogas work, even in the absence of as much support as we like. So, Chris, thank you very much indeed. It's been a pleasure being here.
Really does set a platform for being able to see this scale. And I think you did a good job. One of my opening remarks was, we're here to celebrate, but we're also here to celebrate a groundbreaking because we have a lot more work to do. One real quick question, Charlotte, right now. How have you seen biogas for renewable thermal applications being treated? Are you seeing more countries, more folks starting to say, yes, it's great that we direct it for transportation, but we have other thermal needs, and are some incentives starting to be put towards that?
Well, that's an interesting question. So by thermal, you mean for heating, displacing heating?
Yeah, heating, primarily in kind of more in the industrial sector, some of those hard to decarbonize opportunities.
Well, it is a really interesting question, and I think that the sort of biggest demand we're seeing is from big industrial organizations that are really struggling to meet their net zero targets without being able to decarbonize their heat. I think we need to see greater recognition of that need from a policy level, a political level. But such organizations are very large and have large clout. So I hope that by collaborating and working together, we can get that message across and get where we need to be from a policy point of view.
Great. Thank you, Charlotte. And I hope you'll be able to stay on for a little bit longer. We might have some more time for Q&A here in a minute. Our next presenter is Ola Velplund. Ola is the Chief Executive Officer of Nature Energy. And I'm proud to say that Nature Energy has been one of the founding partners of our Biogas Alliance that you've heard mention of several times. And Nature Energy is the world's first fully integrated RNG company, started back in 2013. And without further ado, Ola, I would like to turn the stage over to you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. I will try to share my presentation here. Can you see my screen now?
Not quite yet, no. Let's give it one more try, Ola. I think we have your presentation. If it's not working, we can share it from here. Can you tell me that again? Okay, we've got it, Ola. We're ready to go.
Yeah, okay. Thank you very much for having the opportunity to speak to this conference. I'm pleased to do that. I will tell a little bit about our company. As Klaus already have said, that we saw that we had a disrupted business, so we had to find something else to do than sell natural gas. So we turned the company into a biogas company. So I'll go ahead now. Thank you very much. As we are very used to say in Denmark that sun and wind will be the answer on the green transition, but one of the things that people used to forget is that biological waste or organic waste is also a resource that we have every year, as we have with sun and wind. So we have to take organic waste and organic waste as a part of the equation when you look at for the green transition in the future. And now I'll try to challenge our IT systems here by showing a small video. I hope that it will come through to you. You see it?
Yeah, we are putting the video on from here, Ola, so give us just a couple of seconds.
The green transition is now. We've already come a long way, and we will go even further. At Nature Energy, we take the waste that nobody really wants and converts it into green biogas and green fertilizer. We send agricultural waste products, biological industrial waste, and your food waste into our facilities, which provide green fertilizer to farmers and green biogas for the energy that our society needs. This is energy that can be used as well as stored, thereby reducing environmentally damaging emissions and benefiting our world as a whole. Biogas isn't just used to heat your home, it can also help transition industry from black to green. Add to this the future possibilities relating to jet fuels and the potential transition of the entire transport industry. In fact, you can already ride on buses fueled by biogas from our gas stations. The use of biogas is steaming ahead, and we will accelerate that development domestically as well as internationally and on a massive scale. Our ambition is to play a pivotal and active role in the green transition of the global energy consumption. We've gone from a small biogas plant in Denmark to many large-scale plants. We have our own state-of-the-art laboratory, and we're also operating plants internationally. We're already world-leading, but we need your help. We need to sort and send biological waste through a biogas plant so that together we can create green value from our biological waste. We are Nature Energy, and our solution is pivotal to the green transition.
Thank you very much. So you now have a view of the company and a feeling of what we're doing. And what we've done in Denmark is that we have 11 plants in operation in Denmark. We convert about 5 million tons of biological waste into approximately 200 million cubic meters of methane. And we really believe in having these large-scale plants because of mainly one thing is to drive down cost and get the economy of scales on our biogas production, because it's really important to be somewhat competitive to natural gas. We really need to find a way to break the cost curve there. And we actually believe that the foundation we have in Denmark, where we have these 11 plants in construction, still building some at the moment, that we will be able to move out in other countries from here, and we'll go to some of our neighboring countries in Europe and build more plants here. You see that we already operate a plant in France, and maybe we'll have a couple of plants more in a couple of years in France. And when we look at the world, actually, that we also see that there's a lot of opportunities for biogas plants in the US or North America. When we look at the waste available or the biological waste available in US, Canada, and we compare it with the size of biogas plants that we build, I think there'll be room for around the 2,000 plants in the North America, and that compared with the 2,000 plants in the potential of 2,000 plants in Europe as well. You can see that we have a way to go still when we only have 11 plants in operation at the moment. But we look into the North American market as one of the next steps we will take in the company. And even if we go further, you can see that in Southeast Asia, there will be room for about 7,000 biogas plants at our size there. So there's an extremely big need for biogas around the globe. We want to take our share of that, of course. when we look at the US market, there's a very big potential in US. It's an advanced market for renewable natural gas there in transportation, in industry, and so forth. And we also see that you have a huge agricultural production in the US, which is a very good link together with our biogas plants. At all our plants, we have cooperation with farmers, both pig producers and cattle producers. So the link to the farmers and also to get the green fertilizers out on the fields is important to have this link. We build, own, and operate the plants, so we both have the technology. We have the power to finance the plant, and we want to have control of operation ourselves to make sure that we have control of cost. And we really think it's important to have large scale. We are at the moment maturing a number of large scale biogas plants in the Midwest and in Canada, and each of the projects will have about 600 tons of biomass each. So they are very much comparable with the facilities that we have in Denmark. Every time we look at a biogas plant and in the local area, we really seek for strategic partnerships with the key market players. So we would be very happy to have partnerships with all players in the market around biological waste. I think that was my short presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ola, for that overview. When I first learned of, as Klaus mentioned earlier, Nature Energy's journey from a fossil natural gas supplier to now the world's first fully integrated renewable natural gas company, I was very impressed and remain so a couple of years later. Ola, if I could ask, obviously your model has been very successful in Denmark. Do you see some changes that might have to happen based on the United States or other markets to your model to make it successful there?
Yeah, I would say one of the major challenges that we have, and also main differences, is that what we see in the U.S. market, we don't see as much state subsidies as we get in Denmark. So we have to find a model where we are building these facilities more on market terms, I would say. So we have to find a way to deal with the market, both on tipping fees and on the gas sales, on PPAs or whatever. We can find a solution on that part. But we see that we have different opportunities there.
Great, thank you, Ola. I hope you can stay on just for a few minutes longer. We move to our last speaker today. Last but not least, we're happy to have Bruno Nielsen. Bruno is the Chief Operating Officer of Biogas Denmark. Bruno has been in the industry in Denmark for the last 30 years. And we've talked a lot about the triple helix approach. Obviously, a group like an association fits right in between all of those government, private sector, and academia. And so we're happy to have Bruno here to share some thoughts on how things have grown in Denmark and how that might apply elsewhere. Bruno, thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak at this celebration. As you said, I have been working with biogas for almost 30 years in the Danish Biogas Association. And to give a brief presentation about the Danish Biogas Association, this is the organization for all the stakeholders in the biogas sector in Denmark. It was established in 1997, and our mission is to promote both the production and the use of biogas, and to promote the circular economy. And we have been spending a lot of efforts in the networking and in the capacity building and knowledge sharing, not the least be on the managers and the owners of the biogas plants. The members of the Biogas Association are the producers and the users of biogas. We represent at least 95% of the biogas production in Denmark. And we represent the suppliers of the biomass, the residues that goes into the biogas plants, and the users of the digestate and the energy products. And we have the technology and the equipment suppliers. We have the consultants and the knowledge institutions. So briefly, we could say we represent the whole energy, waste, and agriculture sectors. When we look into the last 30 or 40 years of experience, or actually close to 50 years of experience in Denmark, then we can say that Danish biogas is based on agriculture. Most people would recognize that is due to that 80% of what goes into the biogas plants are coming directly from agriculture in the form of livestock manure, and it's been mixed in the co-digestion process with the residues or the food waste. But the main thing saying that we are agricultural based is that everything that goes into the biogas plant goes out again as a fertilizer. The livestock manure has improved quality, and we recirculate and make sure we can reuse all the nutrients. If we go back to where it started, then we had a coordinated program back in the late 70s between the Ministries of Environment, Agriculture, and Energy. And it was actually starting up after the first oil crisis in 1973, where Denmark was totally dependent on the import of oil from the Middle East. So we had to look into homeland security of supply of energy. Later in the 80s, the main issue was the means of reducing the leaching of nutrients from agriculture to make it more sustainable, but also to make sure that we could use the residues from the industry and the households. So we can say that the environmental focus has shifted from the protection of the environment into the reuse and the recirculation of the resources in the circular economy. And overall, through several decades, the issue of climate change has, of course, had a central role to play in all the sectors, especially in the agricultural sector, where the government right now are negotiating a plan for reducing the emissions of greenhouse gases from agriculture, but also from the energy sector. And we could say that right now we are back at the starting point, because with the aim of being totally independent of fossil fuels by 2050, that Denmark is heading for the way of security of supply without any fossil fuels. So we are back in the supply security system, mainly in those areas where electrification is difficult, in the transportation sector, the heavy-duty transportation sector, and in the heavy or the energy intensive industry. So we could also say that the story of biogas is that we left the laboratories back in the beginning of the 80s. We stopped looking mainly in laboratories, in the pilot projects, and went into the full-scale demonstration or commercial plants in the beginning of the 80s. And actually, several of those biogas plants, the centralized biogas plants, are still in operation on a commercial basis almost 40 years later. What has been the main thing to promote the development is the determined long-term framework conditions. In Denmark, we have had the feed-in tariffs in the first years only on the electricity production, but now also for the injection of the biomethane into the gas grid. We have had the investment grants, but now we are turning more and more into the issue of market pull. As Ole said, there are differences in different countries all over the world, and the the easy way to the feed-in tariffs might not be easy in all over the globe. A final thing I would say is very important is the access to the energy infrastructure. Everybody believes that the electricity infrastructure is the easy part, and we have had access to that for many years. But it wasn't until 8 years ago that we got access to the gas grid. But this is very important because what we are doing in the biogas sector in Denmark is that we are making storable renewable energy. When we produce the biogas, upgrade it into biomethane and inject it into the gas grid, then we can leave it there for hours or days or months and taking up where we need the renewable energy. So if we look into a few of the essential things in many different ways of policy-driven instruments, then I would mention 4 issues. One of them is that back in 2009, the Danish Parliament was going to implement new stricter rules on agriculture to be more environmental friendly. One of the things we proposed was an investment grant for the construction of the biogas plants. And the reason why we took that instrument was that it was right after the financial crisis. So it was very difficult to go to the bank and get the biogas plant financed. And actually, the government had put up a target that by 2020, half of the livestock manure in Denmark should be treated in biogas plants. The most important framework condition we have had was the energy agreement in 2012, where the feed-in tariff for the power production was increased, but this feed-in tariff for the upgraded for the biogas, the biomethane into the gas grid, is actually what has instrumented the huge development we have seen in biogas in Denmark. At the same time, we were working on a new way of waste handling in Denmark. We are the world leaders in the incineration of all kinds of waste in Denmark, turning it into at least mainly heat going into the district heating system, but also a minor share goes into the electricity production. But when we look on the resources for the long-term food supply, then we simply need to make sure we reuse all the nutrients in the food waste. So the Ministry of Environment came up with a resource strategy saying that by 2023, 50% of the household waste should go into, should be reused. And everybody knows that that could only be fulfilled when all the households will source separate the waste and the organic fraction will go into the biogas plants instead of going into the incinerations plant. And the final one is the climate law from 2019, saying that in Denmark, we go for the target to reduce the emission of greenhouse gases by 70% by 2030. And one of the main things the government did was to establish 13 climate partnerships where the industry in each sector, in agriculture, in the transportation sector, in the shipping sector, in the aviation sector, they should draw up plans in their own sectors on how they would fulfill the 70% target. And what we realized was that in at least 10 of those partnerships, biogas play an essential role, either in the way of handling organic residues in the waste handling sector, or as an essential way of renewable energy in the transportation sector, or as a peak production of electricity or heat. Another important thing to say is that Charlotte showed you these huge big numbers on the organic residues globally, but we should realize that most of those residues cannot be transported on that long distances. So a main thing is to start looking into the resources you can control. And here is the biogas potential in the report made for the Danish Energy Agency last year, saying that in the residues, Danish residues from livestock manure, from industrial residues, from straw, we can produce 94 petajoules of biogas. And you can see straw, the yellow one, is the largest. And you can see the projections in how these residues will be utilized during the next 20 or 30 years. And on top of that, we should also make sure that we use the CO2 content of the biogas to store renewable energy from the power plants or the solar from the windmills or the solar panels, so that we could actually increase the methane production into more than 120 petajoules. But what will this mean for the local resources? In the right-hand side, you can see the projections of the Biogas Association on the use of the livestock manure, either to fulfill the aim or the projections from the Danish Energy Agency that we will meet 52 petajoules by 2030, or a slightly more ambitious goal from our organization to meet 60 petajoules. And you can see we will have to utilize at least between 60 and 70% of the livestock manure, and also use between 30 and 40% of the straw. But of course, we should also make use of many of the residues that we can source on the global market. Back in 2018, we made a very ambitious projection saying that by 2020, the Danish biogas plants will digest 20% of the Danish livestock manure, and 20% of the natural gas will be replaced by 20 petajoules of biogas. We were close, but actually the development turned into a more positive way. So actually we last year digested 21% of the livestock manure, and we produced 21 petajoules of biogas. So this is just to say that with the right framework conditions, with the right climate for the investments, with the right partnerships between industry and agriculture and the utilities, then we can make sure that we can utilize the resources and turn them into fertilizers and renewable energy. Thank you.
Bruno, thank you very much. I think that was a fantastic presentation to end on today. I think you hit all the marks that we wanted to, and recognizing biogas and digestion's role in climate and environmental issues. I think you did a great job with that. And so I want to follow up with a question kind of in that regard. You know, as we've been talking about all day, biogas kind of fits into the intersection between energy, agriculture, and environment. And oftentimes you have different people who are in charge of implementing policies around those things. And based on your experience in Denmark, if you were talking to the American Biogas Council or the Canadian Biogas Association or Charlotte at the World Biogas Association, kind of what are some of your recommendations about how to maneuver this, you know, this political landscape across these different ideas?
I think the main thing is to realize that the biogas plants can deliver solutions to many of the global challenges. And actually the main thing is to imagine or to think, how can the biogas industry be thought into, implemented in all different kinds of sectors. And a certain period of times, a couple of years ago, actually several ministries started to call me and ask, how can you help us with our problems? And I think that should be the main key, that everybody should focus on the biogas plants, the anaerobic digesters, the resource managers in the circular economy as the solution for many of the challenges we are having, either on the sustainable food production or a non-fossil energy supply in the future.
Right. And I would imagine, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but having good data, good science to present to the environmental organizations or the climate organizations has got to be important, I would imagine.
Sure, and Klaus mentioned the biogas task force, and actually that was a part of the 2012 energy agreement that the parliament decided that there should be a task force specifically on biogas, and all the other renewable energy sectors really envied us that that we got this task force, because we could focus on the main issues. How could we make the digestion process more efficient? How can we look into the costs and so on? And actually that brought a lot of new knowledge. And the main thing is that it was not knowledge invented or paid by us in the industry, but actually was developed with the logo of the Danish Energy Agency. And this means that it has it's somehow, I don't really understand that, but somehow it's more reliable than when the industry comes with the figures themselves.
Great. Well, thank you for your time today and for your 30 years in helping the Danish biogas industry grow. I think we have time, if we could bring our other speakers back on, I think we have time for a couple of questions. Ola, if I could ask, in terms of kind of innovation, can you talk a little bit about how Nature Energy looks at innovation? I know that you have some labs in Denmark and in other places in the world, and we've heard about the use of carbon dioxide and power to X. Can you talk a little about innovation?
Yes, I think that I said from the start, when we started in 2014, we said that we should be able to take in straw in our biogas plant by 2019. And we said that we should be able to do methanization in 2024. And that's what we have worked on since then. And we also look at other things that could improve the utilization of the biomass we have in our digesters, so that we get more methane out of it. And we also did the trial at one of our plants in Korsgaard, where we capture all the CO2 and make it available for the food industry in Denmark, so they have green CO2 for the beers and sodas and food production. And it actually counts for a fourth of the CO2 consumption for food industry in Denmark. So it's really shows what we can do with biogas. And I also look very much into the power to X and the methanization. We should use that for that, and I'm pretty sure that we'll be able to capture all the CO2 from our plants in 2024, so that we can actually do some power to X from our or power to methane from our biogas plants. So there's a number of areas where we can utilize the biogas plants more and create new revenue streams for our biogas plants.
Great, thank you, Ola. And we very much look forward to helping and seeing you enter the North American market very soon. Charlotte, a quick question for you. We talked a bit, throughout the day about methane and kind of its stature growing in climate discussions. Are you seeing that we have COP26 coming up? Are you seeing any specific focus on biogas and methane in relation to that? I don't know if you're involved in that one, but.
Well, everybody's waiting to see, but we have put in an application to be at COP26, and the focus is methane. So yes, I do see the focus on that increasing. I think the UK's Climate Change Committee is starting to become more focused on that. I think it's a really good opportunity for this industry to be able to demonstrate the value, to go back to Bruno's point, that we are a solution to many problems, and the methane problem is one that we can make a significant contribution to reducing. So yes, in short.
Great. And I think, Charlotte, you all have an event coming up sometime soon, the World Biogas Summit. Do you want to just quickly make people aware of that?
Great. Well, Chris, never miss an opportunity to talk about that. Yes, on the 2nd and 3rd of March, fingers crossed, it'll be back to being a physical summit and expo, but an opportunity for all of us to come together again to share the solutions that that we're seeing, and the great examples, some of which have been here today. And it is really great to see such good examples and how people are solving the challenge of delivering biogas when the sort of financials are quite challenging, but huge opportunities. I think you mentioned innovation. Innovation is absolutely key, and just, you know, if we think about the fact that a cow can digest what we do in a tank 20 or 30 times faster, if we could just figure out how the cow and various other animals and birds do it, we'll be off subsidy in no time at all. So those cows are much smarter than they look.
Great. Well, I think due to time, we're gonna move to just some brief closing remarks. But thank all three of you for your time and insights. And I think I'm going to turn it over to my colleague Klaus for some quick closing remarks, and then we will finish up for the day.
Thank you very much, Chris. And first of all, thank you very much to all the speakers taking the time out to share their experience. We're grateful for having you. Also, a big thank you to State of Green for hosting us today, and Industriens Fund for making this possible. Then I'll encourage you to make use of Biogas Go Global as a platform for knowledge sharing, both within government, academia, and within solutions from Denmark. I'll encourage you all to have a look at the program sent out, where there's a brief description of the 8 companies providing everything from engineering, gas conditioning, pre-treatment, enzymes, and other different solutions. So. And we are happy from Food and Biocluster Denmark to connect to Danish academia and share the knowledge we have on R&D and innovation. And we're also happy to have the Danish agency as part of Biogas Go Global. So there's an open invitation to knowledge share on policy throughout the last 8 to 10 years. So that's all from me. I'll give the word back to Chris.
Wonderful. Thanks, Klaus. I don't know if we have that last slide to share. If we possibly do, I would ask folks to share our last slide. I think it was a fantastic couple of hours. I really appreciate, again, all the speakers. I want to definitely recognize the folks here at State of Green, highly professional organization, and some wonderful information to share on a broad spectrum of topics. A couple things I'll highlight. I think that the triple helix approach that we've been talking about all along is going to be critical to see growth. We are very lucky to have some incredibly dedicated companies, as Klaus mentioned. You see them listed on the slide here. If you'd like more information, there's some in the program, or feel free to reach out to us. And I want to recognize our other colleagues in Biogas Go Global very quickly. Michael Steckler, who is Klaus's colleague at Food and Biocluster Denmark, Jonas Jürgens at the Danish Energy Agency, and my colleague Cecilia Sorensen back at the Trade Council. Thank you again very much for your time. I hope this was helpful for you, and feel free to reach out to any of us for more information. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.